move outside of the rift point of, or area of view inside the game. So that actually like leads to different training for military and stuff as well. So because the current limitation of the rift is the controller can only stay within inside the play field basically. But with this gun, he could. They showed the demo. He could move the gun like out of the field of view of the rift, and the gun would and the rift would go out of the field of view, but it would still work.
But what would be the guy seeing when the point of aim is out of the?
Well, like just imagine like if you had your own, a real weapon and you pointed it off to this direction without looking.
Okay.
It's a similar thing to what it does in the rift with that gun, that particular gun.
Interesting.
Does it just synchronize with the rift, or for its
But
position?
what is the person actually seeing?
He sees the gun move out of his field of view.
So
Okay.
you're seeing like this.
Yeah.
Then it just stops right there, but it's from what he's describing, it's still moving on and still tracking its location in your hand.
But yeah, the limitation of the rift before that was that it could only like if this was the field of view, the gun
Yeah.
could only go to here. Or to here.
Oh, okay, I see. So
Yeah.
that's a complete software limitation. It has nothing to do with the hardware device itself, right? I mean,
I'm not sure because the way that it senses action that's going on in front of it, I haven't really like read a whole lot about it, so I couldn't tell you.
Now, is this for what we call augmented reality, or is it virtual reality?
What do you mean?
Augmented reality is a
No, it's
projection.
virtual.
It's virtual?
through
Oh,
the
okay.
rift.
I see. With the virtual reality, there are several ways to deal with this. You can always zoom out so that, whatever is out of your view is once again in the view again, because you can always just go ahead and zoom
So
out.
were the guns being tracked by the rift?
Yes. Before, like the way it happened was the rift would track the hand movements of the person.
Right.
Okay. Well, because of that controller, or it's shaped like a small like MP5 or something.
Okay.
Because that controller now it doesn't have to track the movements. Like you can actually just have the gun, and the gun has like gyroscopes in it and accelerometers.
So
Oh,
it's
okay, so
independent of any
internal
visual
Right.
tracking.
It's
Okay,
internal
got it.
tracking
Got it.
of the gun.
Okay,
The gun.
now I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the gun is no longer tracked by the head-up display
It's
device,
tracked by the
and that's
gun.
why it is independent, and it can go in any direction,
The article I was reading
and the
about
software can track it.
The article I was reading about it said it was a really big deal for the Oculus Rift team because they were trying to figure out how to get around that limitation.
So you can have cowboy shootout, shooting from the hip, right?
Well,
corners.
Huh?
Fine corner.
Yeah.
Or just like behind the back. When someone sneaks up on you,
Well,
just
Yep.
What I thought of it whenever I saw the whole demo and the YouTube video about it and stuff was when I was in the military, we used to use this simulator to train like new soldiers sometimes. It was you could do like combat scenarios and stuff on it, but it was essentially like a screen that was probably the size of that wall, and then you had basically M4s that were like hooked up to a computer.
Tracker.
It had a tracker on it.
Right.
But with this particular thing, you could essentially send soldiers out into an open field, have them put on the rift, give them the gun, and let them train. You wouldn't have to limit them to a small trailer, basically. So you could get not just the I'm playing a video game, but you could also get the I'm running around and doing stuff as well. So,
other than a giant sphere, is there any?
let's put them all in dribble balls.
You get multiple
Treadmill.
people, you get multiple soldiers of a rift, and you look at the enemy from different perspectives. You get like how high, you probably get like a really good perspective of how far they are and like where they are, and you probably like triangulate and then like just bomb.
Yeah, well, I think, in real application, that can definitely be the case. Before you walked in, I was just talking about, the combination of, technology, like, having a Google Glass type device that has two in-pointing, cameras to look at your eyeball so they can track your eyeball movement, two outgoing cameras that are actuated. So, it can follow your actual, eyeball movement but because there are two cameras, now you have stereo vision. The computer has stereo vision. If it knows how to do processing, it has depth perception. And then you have your usual projection, and then you have your accelerometer for tracking, which way you're tilting your head, how fast you're turning.
We're going all Minority Report on this now.
What?
I said we're going all Minority Report on this now.
I think this is beyond, Minority Report.
So I like the part of depth perception is because now you don't have like a flat image. You can just look at a certain point and have it focus. It mimic the focusing on that point.
Yep.
With stereo vision, now the computer can judge distance.
Mm-hmm.
So
But it makes augmented reality actually, a lot more interesting
makes
than
it
it is
augmented.
now, because right now it's all flat, right?
gonna
So
say,
if I want to augment, if I want augmented reality of you, and display like your stats, on top of you, it's going to be flat.
my stats.
Yeah, awesome. With little sparkles, coming out of it, right?
now we're gonna have a straight up Kawaii animated version of me.
What do I want Chris to wear today?
Oh,
Flip,
God.
flip, 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 flip. This, okay. Shamrock. Right. I mean, but the point is, but with reality, with 3D augmented reality, when I look at each one of you, you will have a flag on top of you that actually is matching the depth of my view. So that makes it actually a lot more useful, because now you can tell things, there are, along the same line, but they're at different depths.
And every time I think of something like that, the first thing that comes to mind is military application.
Well, a lot of military application, or a lot of technology, came from military application. You go home, you look at your microwave oven, okay? It's like, okay, now how can that possibly be related to military technology? Radars. That's how they found out that microwave can cook.
I don't want to hear that. I wonder what their accident happened that found out that they
Well, I do know that the radar dishes, they actually tell you to stay away from them, because if you get too close, you can actually fry your internal organs.
Yes,
Very
you
high power
can.
output.
Okay, but it's not quite as graphic as people think it is. It's not like you walk across
No, I mean-
the radar. It's like, oh, a part of me is cooked already.
You have to be able
You
to
feel the
sense it.
warmth first, okay? Because we have a lot of water content. If you microwave in a microwave oven, you're directing 1,200 watts of energy into a tiny little space to try to heat up a cup of water, right? And it still takes about 30, 40 seconds at least, to heat up that little cup of water. You have a lot more water content than that. And radars in general, they are directional, but they're not, focusing in a very tiny space. So for the most part, I think it's just a warming sensation, but not quite I'm getting cooked kind of sensation, or exploding like most people think. It's like you get cooked so quickly that there's internal pressure to explode. No, I don't think that's the case. So that's one application. Most of the other things, like jet engine, was originally a military application. Satellites. Medicine, and so on. A lot of medicines, yep. Even the chocolate bar.
Oh, remember to start recording.
You
Yep.
just did.
It's already recording.
Oh, yeah.
What's the Wi-Fi password again?
The Wi-Fi password is, I need to write it. I think it's I386 uppercase ASN exclamation point.
Okay.
You're recording your voice.
Hmm? Well, it's difficult to pick it up, and it will only serve people who are actually physically around the Wi-Fi router. So I'm not too concerned about it.
Well, you made note of it last time.
Yeah. All right. So what we'll do today is we're moving on, even though I have very limited success of actually doing inside Eclipse. I'll show you guys what I have up to this point. Is to move on and talk about action bar, because this will pretty much conclude all the basic stuff that we have to talk about regarding the user interface. Okay. The action bar is a new concept since Honeycomb or Android 3.0. So if you want your application to be backward compatible, to before 3.0, you have to do something about it to give it the look of an action bar. But anything after version 3.0 already has action bar as a part of the framework. So the action bar has several components, and right here, let me just kind of zoom in a few more steps like that. Okay. So the action bar is a window feature that identifies several things. The user location. Now, when they say the user location, it is not the physical location of the user, but the user location with respect to the application. So if you're using Gmail, okay, it will tell you, which account you're looking at, or are you out in the outer portion of Gmail. You can do the configuration and stuff like that. In other words, if you have hierarchical screens or activities, this will show you where you are within that hierarchy. It is almost equivalent to the prompt of a command line interface, showing you which folder you're in at this point as your working directory. So this one is kind of showing you where you are in the application, in case your application has multiple screens and you kind of need to know where you are and can I get back up to the previous one. It provides user action and navigation modes. Okay, user action in this case would be what traditionally would be done by menu and menu items. Now they're rolled into the action bar thing, so you can perform those actions using the action bar. Using the action bar offers your users a familiar interface across multiple applications that the system gracefully adapts for different screens configuration. So they're trying to use a very small area on top of your application to serve multiple purposes depending on the application. So here's an example of Google Play, which I do not use. Number one is called the icon, the application icon, which also can have a little arrow here that can allow you to go back to a previous screen. So if you have to navigate to here, to this point, using navigation from some other screen, it allows you to go back, okay, without using the actual back button on your phone itself. The rest, number two, is two action items. So the one action item is the search button here. The other button is, I guess, is for you to purchase a movie or some kind of a media content. And the number three is what we call an action overflow. In other words, if you have to specify more actions that it will fit within the action bar area, it will become a part of this bar here. So when you click this bar, the dot 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 in vertical format, then it will display what we traditionally know as the menu of most computer programs. So are we doing okay so far with the basic understanding of what is the action bar? Let me see if the emulator or the ABD actually has anything, and I will just also bring to your attention what you might need to do when you are updating your software, because this is a problem that I personally encountered the other day. You might encounter the same problem too when you do the same. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to bring all the packages up to date. So go to Tools. If you use Windows, you still have to do about the same thing, so I don't think it makes any difference whether you're using Windows or Linux. It's just that in Windows, you might not need to go to a command line tool to do this. So the update that I got last night that caused that trigger a sequence of events is the revision 22.6.1 of Android SDK tools. Okay, this part has nothing to do with Eclipse at all. But when I run Eclipse, it checks that the Android SDK tools has been upgraded from 22.2 point something to 22.6 point something. And then Eclipse then prompted me and say, okay, we need to bring the ADT plugin also to the same version. ADT stands for Android Development Tool. So it wants to bring that up to the same version. And that's when problems actually started to happen. So let me show you what problem I am experiencing right now. And I did it to two computers, and they behave basically the same way. So I know it is not because of one particular configuration.
I broke it once and decided to break it again.
Sorry?
I said I broke it once and I decided to break it again.
Just to make sure that that's consistent, yes. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to notice, what version is reporting when it starts up. Because last night I was using my home computer. I changed the path to the workspace, so now I change it back to what it's supposed to be. Okay. And it is bringing up version 22.2-833290. That's not consistent, but it stopped complaining now. Okay, it doesn't complain anymore. So even though the software still reports it's running an older version of the ADT, the Android development tool plugin, it is no longer having a problem with that. Okay. So what I'll do next is to try to make a project involving the menu. Okay, so I'm going to make a new Android application project. We'll just call this test menu. I'm gonna I'll just be consistent here. It just takes a little bit of time to do it correctly, so I'm gonna do it.
Does the user see that package name?
Sorry?
Will the user ever see the package name?
Yes,
Oh.
because that's how the packages are arranged. So when you back up your Android device, you would actually start to see files, with that kind of name.
Oh, for the H2O project, do you want us to name it like that, or it doesn't matter?
It does not really matter, but if you name it like that, it's just more consistent. It doesn't really matter because I'm not going to install, multiple applications, on the test device all at the same time. So it's not going to be any, there won't be any conflicts. Okay, so for what we are doing today, I cannot use froyo or frozen yogurt for my minimum version, so I have to bring it up to at least honeycomb to have an action bar available. In fact, I'm going to bring it all the way up to ice cream sandwich, just to make sure that I have the later features as well. But you don't have to bring it up to 4.0. I believe 3.0 will have all those features as well already, or at least the features that I want to demonstrate today. Okay. We want a custom launcher icon. Fine, it's going to use the same icon as the default icon on the action bar. So if you want the action bar to look right with your actual application, you have to make sure that your custom launcher icon is correct. You can change that later. You can basically use a logo instead of your launcher icon at the left-hand side of your action bar. But by default, it would just use whatever we specify here. Create activity, definitely do that, because otherwise you won't even have a screen to begin with. All right, so click next. I'm just going to use the default icon. That's okay. Click next. Here we have a choice of all of these different types. A blank activity is going to be okay, because it creates a new blank activity with an action bar and an optional navigational element such as tabs or horizontal swipe. Those will be specified in the next step, but at least it will have an action bar. The other part I'm not too concerned about, the navigational type, whether it's a swipe type, action bar spinner, or navigational drawer. It doesn't really matter because those are not the things that I'm trying to illustrate today. So being none is still okay, because if you look at the icon here, it already has the action bar, it has the overflow area, and the icon, already on the action bar. So that's basically all I need, and I click finish. It takes a little bit of time. It's actually a lot. Okay, yeah, it takes a little bit of time now. The rendering target is still loading. All right, there we go. So now we have everything looking just right, okay? Because we have a menu bar that has nothing, so there's nothing to display because I did not specify any menu items in the menu. We have the action bar pretty much doing nothing at this point. The problem that I had last night, and I still have not resolved it, is how do I add menu items to the action bar? Main.xml under menu is what you need to do to add items to the menu bar. And I can click add, but this part is frozen. It is grayed out. I cannot actually input something and then click OK to add an item or add an element in the top level. not using the GUI tool. Okay, so later on today, I will be using the XML representation and see if I can do it using the XML resources, because I can use the GUI tool, or I can use the XML file, and if I drop down to the XML file, at least I can directly edit the XML file to try to add an item into the menu bar. Okay. So are there any questions at this point? Has anyone tried to upgrade your ADT, your Android development tool, to version 22.6, or your system has prompted you to do so?
Yeah, I did it on Linux 7.4,
Mhm.
even 7.4, and it's not working.
It's not working, right?
The emulator is not working, it just crashes before nothing. So I had to revert back to what it does.
I see. Yeah, I think it is. When you look at the manual, the documentation of 22.6, it did mention that it might invalidate some of the AVDs. So you will have to go to the AVD, go to edit, and make sure that it is set up correctly.
Is that
So you-
upgrading to 22.6.1 or just 22.6?
22.6.1.
Oh, I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still at 22.3.
So with this one, you can see that the device was missing. But I have been using this device for a long time. So it actually, I think what it did was it fixes one problem with the earlier version of the AVD launcher. But by doing so, the configuration of your original AVDs might have a problem until you repair it.
But I also heard that even 7.4 has a lot of bugs still, so it's not stable. It is not stable at all.
It's unstable, huh?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the club. Okay, so I'm gonna start, just see whether I can get this AVD started. It was still working on Monday before I did the upgrade, so we'll see whether it's gonna work today with the update. All right, I'm not seeing the virtual machine. It might be starting up, I don't know. I'll give it some time. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll switch back into the documentation. This is actually on the Android site itself. It is a guide to use action bars. All right, so I'm just going to scroll down here and continue with just kind of reading it, but at the same time kind of adding some. Oh, okay, it started up the virtual machine. So mine is okay. I can actually at least launch the virtual machine from the AVD launcher. The action bar provides several key functions. Provide a dedicated space for giving your application an identity and indicating the user's location in the app. And that part refers to this portion of the action bar. Because when the user sees your icon, assuming you have an icon that clearly identifies your application, a user who switched to this screen can immediately tell, oh, okay, I'm in Gmail, or I'm in Google Navigation, or whatever application that the user can immediately identify which application he or she is in. And then the second thing is this portion here, where it says Google Play. If you use like Gmail, this will reflect the actual account name. Let me just double check and make sure that is the case, because I think it is the case. Okay. And at least with email, it will show you the box that you're in. So you're in the inbox, the sent box, or the junk mailbox. It will show you the box. If you go back one step, it would actually show you your account name as well. Okay. So that's what it means when it says that it will tell you where you are. Where's the user with respect to the application at the time. Makes important action prominent and accessible in a predictable way. That refers to what you want to push out here. That makes up what we call the toolbar. On the desktop, it's called a toolbar, but in Android, it's called it's just called action items or menu items that are quote unquote promoted onto the bar itself. So when I use Gmail, let me take a look at Gmail first. So when I look at Gmail, I have the search icon and also the new compose new mail icon, on my bar. And if I change the orientation, which makes the bar longer, it doesn't actually display the other ones. But there are other buttons too, when I click the overflow button. So it's basically combining a few things into one single bar on top of your application. Supports consistent navigation and view switching within apps with tabs or drop-down lists. We'll talk about this a little bit later, because what if this is not enough? What if what you're trying to do cannot be done with a single bar or a single button? It allows you to have drop-down lists and also tabs like this one here. You have movies, TV shows, and personal videos as tabs. And all of those are supported by the Android framework, so you don't need to put in your own logic to have all those features available. Yep.
Is that a way for, I guess, Android to try to standardize the UI between all apps?
Yep. It's trying to clean up, all the other apps, because all the different apps from version 2.2 or 2.3, which is when Android actually starts to pick up and become popular. Apps written between version 2.2 to version 3 and many apps written after 3, they have their own way of organizing everything. So with one app, it can have custom buttons, that comes from the app itself at the bottom of the screen. And with another app, you have the same kind of buttons, but they appear on one side of the screen and not the other side. So what this is about is is trying to unify and make all the apps to appear about the same as far as user navigation is concerned. And you don't have to put in your own code and have your own buttons to do what is already accomplished by the framework itself. So this is actually a major improvement over earlier versions of Android. For more information about the Action Bar's interaction patterns and design guidelines, see the Action Bar Design Guide. So it's basically just a spin-off, another design guide for the Action Bar itself. So we're not going to go there just yet. The Action Bar API were first introduced in Android 3.0, and that's why I mentioned earlier, if you want to make use of the Action Bar, you should start to use version 3.0 or at least API 11 as your minimum. But they're also available in the support library for compatibility with Android 2.1 and above. So that means you can actually make an app look like it is in Android 3.0 or above on older devices if you use the support libraries. Okay, it's not going to be as efficient, and it's not going to be as spiffy, because it's going to be supported by a support library and it's not native to the framework anymore. This guide focuses on how to use the support library's Action Bar, but if your app only supports 3.0 or higher, you should use Action Bar API in the framework. Most of the APIs are the same, but resides in a different package namespace. So that means we have a different import statement. It kind of illustrates here. If supporting API is lower than 11, you have to do this import here. It's basically saying it is support version 7, app Action Bar, as opposed to native to Android itself instead of through the support library. Okay, so here they talk about how to add the Action Bar, but without using Eclipse. So these instructions apply to if you just want to use XML files to control what features are available in your application. These are the things that you have to do to introduce Action Bar or to add an Action Bar to your application. We are okay with that. We don't have to do that because at least we got Eclipse running up to the point where that part is done already. On API level 11 or higher, which is Honeycomb or higher, the Action Bar is included in all activities using the theme.holo theme or one of its descendants, which is the default theme when either the target SDK version or min SDK version attribute is set to 11 or higher, which is what we did in Eclipse today. All right, so we'll switch back to Eclipse and actually just get this blank application running first. Not running yet. Okay, I guess I didn't click it all the way. Should be working. Yep. So there you go. There we have the action item. It has nothing to do, except for settings, and there's nothing in settings either. This one doesn't do anything. There's no back here because this is the very first activity already in this particular application. So it does work. Okay, it's just that I cannot add any menu items to the menu, and that kind of bugs me because it really should work. If I go to layout and just click add, I should be able to add something to the menu, but it's not letting me do anything like that. Right. We can hide the action bar at runtime by calling the hide feature. So we can. This would not be the right call for us because we are using version 11 and up. So this is not the way to get to the action bar. So see right here on API level 11 or higher, get the action bar with just get action bar instead of get support action bar, because action bar is no longer coming from the support library, but it becomes native to the application framework. Okay. All right. You can use a logo instead of the icon, so you can switch it, during runtime too. Adding action items. Now this is the part where it is kind of useful because I can actually test this using the XML representation, even though the GUI part is not working. The what you see is what you get interface is not working at this point. The action bar provides user access to the most important action items related to the app's current context, and so on. We already have seen this method once on create options menu. It is basically one of the template methods that are already predefined when Eclipse creates an Android application. So this one we have done it already. The big question is, what can we do, to actually make our menu item a little bit longer, to include more action items? And the XML file format for that is to include, basically item definitions inside the XML file. So let's compare this to what we are seeing in Eclipse at this point. Okay. This is what I have in Eclipse right now. It has one single item, and it has to do with settings, which is fine because that's exactly what we saw when we ran the application. And switching back to here, the ID, when it has an @ symbol here, it means the ID is not what is literally inside the double quoted string. It is based on the ID as a resource, and the name of the ID is action search in this case. In our case, it is action setting. And then the icon, if you have an icon to correspond to it, it is a drawable blah blah blah, which is a resource inside the file as well. And in our case, it does not have a icon. In other words, this icon here is not specified in this particular item, so it's just spelled out as settings. But if you want an icon to be associated with that particular menu item, you can do it by the icon attribute. Okay. And then the title is really the name of the menu item itself. It is a part of a string table. In this case, we are using action_settings as a string inside the string table. You can use just basically literal strings inside here, but it's just not recommended at all because it makes the translation process a lot more difficult. So do we have any questions about this part? Let's go ahead and see if we can add another menu item but this time using the individual resources. So we will have to add a new ID into the resource ID resource, and we'll have to add a string into the string resource, and then we can create another item and see whether it will show up in the application. Because I think the bug is with the GUI tool, it's not really with the rest of the Android tool set. So we'll take a look. First thing first, we'll go to resources and go to the strings. So we have strings. And I'm just going to add some additional strings here. So we'll just add action test. Okay? So we'll create a new element at the top level, action underscore resource element, add string. Oops. It's not going to be that either.
It's out to get you.
Hmm?
It's out to get you.
Yes. That doesn't work. I'm adding two strings except they're empty. We'll just go ahead and modify the XML file.
If we do need to do it, let's just bash the code.
Well, before we had, GUIs and, really cool tools, this is all that we have, right?
Back in my day.
Well, why use Dreamweaver when I have Notepad? Okay, so I have just added one string into the string resources file directly as an XML file. Is everybody familiar with the purpose of the XML language and also what it's intended for? Okay.
Hierarchical, graphical GUI.
It's not necessarily graphical, it's just hierarchical. Yeah, it basically is just a way to specify, it's a container of whatever you want to contain. If you look into all the newer document formats, including Microsoft Word, Open Office Writer, Microsoft Excel, and all of the other type of document formats, underneath everything, the spreadsheet, a document, they're all represented by XML. So it's basically a universal container language to say that this is including this, and that is including this, and that is including this. But the most important part is it is enforceable. In other words, you can specify rules of whether this can include the other type of element.
Didn't Microsoft get sued by using XML in their Word document format?
They got sued not because they use XML, but because they claim it is open.
Oh.
But in reality, it was not open. In other words, they did not actually publish the full specification of the language, so there's no one that a third party can actually create a reader to read Microsoft Word documents and render it the way it's supposed to.
So did they comply by making it a reader, making it open?
I cannot remember the whole story, but you
They
can
did
probably
not.
do a Google search.
DocX is not readable by anything other than Word.
It is.
Oh, wait, no,
LibreOffice can read it.
Yeah.
But whether they could read it because it's just reverse engineering or whether it's because of the full specification, that part I do not know. I know the.
I found a fix for the ADT plugin.
Oh, okay.
If you go to
Is it add?
it's actually you just go to help,
Yeah, I think I.
install new software.
Yeah, I tried this already.
Oh no, and then you go to the drop down right there,
Uh-huh.
and then go to ADT. Is it more than one? Oh no, Android Developer Tools.
This one?
Yeah. And then click Developer Tools, the checkbox. And then hit next. It'll say that it's already installed,
Yep.
and then it'll actually install over again. I think let me.
It won't
select
even
the-
let me click next.
Oh, doesn't it say that it's already installed and then?
Well,
It
let's
does.
take a look.
Will be ignored because it's already installed.
Oh no, but it did for me, and now it worked. I actually found the Google issues forum,
Mhm.
and it worked for me.
Okay,
It
so
was like-
because it won't let me proceed, after the next screen.
Yeah.
I click everything here, details and so on. That's really just the description and copyright notice. Show only software applicable to target. Hide
Okay, next
items
again.
that are already installed.
Can you hit next again? It took a second before it loaded. Like it kind of like hung for a little while, but
The operation cannot be completed. See the details, and the details is here, and it says this will be ignored because it is already installed. It will be ignored because it's already installed. Because I did this already last night,
oh, gotcha.
but it did not manage to bring the message when Eclipse first started. It reports back the version of ADT. It is still reporting back as 2.22.2 or 22.2.
Gotcha.
How about
Yeah.
just deleting everything that's not modified by you and just reinstalling it?
I tried that, and the Android executable disappeared. So I'm not tempted to do it here, just because
Okay.
I don't want to have to reinstall the entire thing at this point. I suppose I can back up the folder first and then do something to it.
Just delete /root.
RN dash uppercase R lowercase f.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't ask me whether I really want to do it or not. Yes, I want to do it.
Would you like to destroy your file systems? Yes.
All right, so we have just added an additional string for test, and I need to add another ID for that. So I need to look for the resource ID this time, and I need to go find out where it's located. Where it's located?
What were you looking for?
Resource ID.
I think it's just values.
We are already in values. These are related to the different screen size and different styles. So where's the ID? I cannot remember. Cannot be under bin. Libs, no. No. Yep, there we go. I think that's where it is.
No.
The resource ID?
That's generated files.
Yeah, but that's also where the actual strings are located. It looks different from
What's your intent?
I have to add a new ID so that when we create the menu, it can refer to the ID that I just created.
Yeah, it's right there to the right. One down. You got your string right there.
But that's generated. I don't necessarily want to mess around with something that is actually generated by the system. So I need to find a way to add the ID, but without messing around with what is.
I think if you just run it, it'll generate it.
Run.
Just run it with the build, and just run your application, and it should generate the IDs automatically.
Okay, so that means I have to change this first to create the new action item. Alright, so let's go ahead and change this one. So instead of action settings, now we have action test. I don't think it's going to work because it's not actually defined.
So just go through there and automatically see it and build whatever preferences it needs.
Get it.
Oops.
What did Google do to the SDK? I haven't upgraded to 22.6.1 and my SDK is completely screwed up right now. I don't know why.
Mine seems
You
so
did it
wordy.
even though I warned you guys about the problems and
I did it actually when you warned me about it, and I
Oh,
actually
okay.
I looked at the forums, but like their solution. Did you check out to see if you're using HTTPS or HTTP?
I tried both and neither worked. It neither worked the way it's supposed to. In other words, it's still reporting back as 22.2 when I start the application instead of 22.6. But it refuses to do any more updates. It says I'm up to date already.
Yeah, mine did that, and then a dialogue popped up.
And then what?
It's a dialogue popped up that said it's already updated, and then
Yeah.
you click next again, and it just will reinstall anyways.
Never mind. I think.
What happened?
Oh, it just wasn't, for some reason, it kept throwing errors whenever it tried to access a 32-bit library.
Ah.
This is a very recent issue, though. I'm looking at the forum. There's like
Yes,
people who
it is.
posted within,
It's like last night or
15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Now.
Yep. Someone made that's
Burn
a
it.
problem. Yep. Okay, so we have action test. The ID is created as Tristan said, so that's good. But action test is created only because we have a string with that ID already as well. So okay, now let's go ahead and do it again.
You can't run a Java file.
We have to go back to here first. Yep, so now we have two items. So that means the tools are okay, but for whatever reason, the GUI tool that is supposed to let me define the menu items is just not working at this point. And I
Where's it
don't think
supposed
I'm...
to be? Where's it supposed to be at?
It's supposed to be here. When I double click main.xml inside menu, which is inside resource, it has two tabs at the bottom, which means there are two ways to look at it. One is just to look at the XML file by itself, and the other one is to look at the layout. But you
Yeah.
can see the layout doesn't even have those two items. So it's not even connecting to the XML file itself. And I think that's probably because of the same problem. It's just not connecting at all. And it does not match, I looked online too, to look at other screenshots and videos of people using this interface to add additional items. This does not look like that either.
Well, I have the newest version of Eclipse, and it's still jacked.
It's not Eclipse itself, it has to do with the plugin. The ADT plugin itself has some kind of inconsistency within itself, or the SDK that is already installed. Okay. So let me try this. Okay, let's go ahead and close this.
I think it doesn't like us.
I think some Apple employee infiltrated Android. Just started to randomly delete some files. It's like, okay, let's see what happens now. Okay. Okay. So it's still reporting 22.2.1, but when I go to check for updates, it comes back and say, "Yep, I'm up to date. No, nothing to do here." No updates were found.
What did you say it was still detecting? 22.6.1?
22.2.1.
Oh.
Now that part has there are a few things that can affect that. The first one is eclipse.ini, because when you start up Eclipse, it has this line here that says, the -d Eclipse build ID is that version. Okay, I tried to remove this one. It did not really change a whole lot. It just changed, what it displays, but it didn't change, the actual, problem,
Well,
inside.
Is there a newer build number, or is that just what it is current?
I don't think anything is going to modify this file, because when I look at the date of this file,
I'm just thinking of Eclipse. Is there a newer
of
version,
Eclipse,
or
Oh,
is
yeah.
that
oh
just
yeah,
the
yeah,
latest
this
one?
Eclipse is an older version of Eclipse, but I think the problem does not have to do with Eclipse itself, but with ADT.
That actually does no longer, that line no longer exists in the newest version
Of ADT?
of Eclipse.
Yeah, I'm looking for the build for Windows and I see 22.3 and whatnot.
Okay, it reports back, oh, okay, I have language setting problems. But this is probably March 19th. So but this Eclipse file, eclipse.ini file is actually fairly recent.
And you still have the package from 2003
Hmm?
and 2013.
Right, that's when
Their
I
overall
first
build.
Yeah, that's when I downloaded. That's the build of Eclipse when I downloaded it. But since then, I have been updating the SDK portion, and Eclipse is supposed to update itself as well.
Maybe just bugged out.
I think so.
Download the newest version.
That's what I was planning to do when I found out that I ran out of space on my home machine. And then I did one thing. Okay, well, since we're here, we might as well give it a try. Okay. Worst case is I have to reinstall everything. No big deal. Okay, this is what I did. It was to go to install new software. No, there's one window that let me select what plugins are available. I think it has to do here. Plugins, come on. It's not this one.
Is that 22.2.1 the SDK version that it's associated with? Because that Eclipse version that Android uses is developed directly for Zen.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, because the newest version of Eclipse is Kepler, and it's independent, and like my Eclipse is independent of my SDK.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Does it have the same issues though?
what do you mean?
Can you create menu items using the graphical tools?
No, that's what I was saying. It has the same issue. So I think
Yeah.
that it's an SDK problem and not an Eclipse problem.
No, it's not an SDK problem because when I manually add it to the XML file, the application that I run actually had those extra items. So it's not an SDK issue because the SDK tool is the one that is responsible to look at the XML file and then create the necessary entries.
Do you think it is the Eclipse thing?
I think it's an Eclipse ADT plug-in thing, because it's the plug-in that provides the graphical tool to handle the construction of the menus.
When I updated my Java, it actually changed behavior for Eclipse.
Okay.
So that might have something to do with it too. Like
The
when
version
you-
of Java?
Yeah, when you update like your ADT by change files, which files in Java, if you reset it or like
Let's take a look at which Java we are running. I think I'm using, let's look at JDK. I'm using OpenJDK, which is actually coming from Sun. That's not the open source version of that. So it's OpenJDK version 7U51-245. Okay, so let's check what is the current version. So look at Debian OpenJDK 7. And look at SID, because I'm running unstable. 245-2, and this is 245-2. So I'm running the latest one, available in the repository already, but it may not be the latest one from Sun because it takes a while for Debian to update its own repository. Are you guys running Windows? And
I'm trying to work on.
okay, do they behave the same way? Can you get the menu tool to work? None at all. Okay.
Well, I haven't updated them in a while, and everything seems to be working. 'Cause I can that it loads up, and I can add new items, no issue.
Okay, so I need to go find a old version of ADT to install.
And I can give you any version numbers you want.
Oh, you have all those archived?
I mean, if you want to know a specific version number of something that's associated to the ADT, then just let me know and I can give you that number.
Oh, okay, I see. So I'm just seeing if SDK archives.
So I have build 22.3.0.
Okay, these are SDKs only. So let's see, go back to tools, development tools, downloads.
Don't you just love it when class is held up by program bugs?
Well, we thought it only happened in the previous class, right, when we used App Inventor. And we thought, okay, when we switch to the official tools, we'll be free of all of those bugs with the development tool itself.
Nice.
Oh, did not quite happen that way, did it? Okay, let me just look at this URL.
Oh, and just for your knowledge, that problem exists in 64-bit as well.
Okay.
I'm running 64-bit.
Well, 64-bit doesn't really matter because I think it's because they're all running Java. This is all running on top of Java.
Yeah, it's all running 32.
So whether your operating system is 32 or 64 has no impact whatsoever. I don't think so. I don't think it has anything to do with that.
Well, just in case you ever thought it might, though.
Oh,
It
okay.
doesn't.
Yep.
Everywhere that I'm looking, nobody uses Eclipse to edit the action bar. They all directly edit the XML file.
Yep. But and it worked. Okay, if you directly edit the bar, it worked. Alrighty. Okay, so I guess we don't have much of a choice here. All right, so getting back to where we were here. All right, so we have the action bar, and now we know how to add additional menu items to it. So now the question is, once you have additional menu items, what are you going to do when somebody actually clicks on that item? Okay, how do you attach your code to the action item that you have put onto your action menu? This part, is just, this is a template. It's already done in Eclipse. So if you go to Eclipse, you go to main activity. The constructor, well, not the constructor, but it already has this code already done, which is here. On create options menu is going to take care of that. And here we have, on options item selected. So it already gives you the template of, what if somebody clicks on an item. This is the code that is triggered when somebody clicks on an item. It gives you the actual item, so you have to differentiate which item is getting clicked, and then you perform the action accordingly. And right here, it only does one thing. It checks whether the ID is matching the action settings. Is matching the action settings ID. So what we need here is another conditional statement to match with action underscore test, so that we can differentiate between the two actions. Is that, yep?
I have a question.
Mhm.
After you added the stuff to the action bar directly through the XML file, did it appear in the layout?
In the layout?
In the GUI part?
Oh, that I don't know. I don't think the GUI part of the layout, has anything to do with menus.
No, I don't think you'll be able to load it through the preview.
You mean with the layout part here?
Yeah.
This part? I don't think so. This has nothing to do with the menu.
Well, I mean, under menu, under the layout part of the menu itself.
Oh, okay. Under menu and here?
Yeah, and then under layout.
Oh no, it doesn't have to load.
Yeah.
No, well, these two buttons are new. Display only item elements versus group elements. These two items are new. They did not appear before.
Maybe because it internally detects two, but it can't display it.
Because everywhere that I'm looking says that you have to implement them first before you can actually edit them in there. So you actually have to directly
Now
edit.
it's in there. now we have at least 2 items, and we can actually create new items now.
Yeah. So in order to actually use the GUI, you have to edit the XML file. That's what I'm reading over some stuff.
But the XML file had an item already to begin with.
Yeah, I just took whatever his files was and just mine, and the basic settings one just appears there natively, and I can just add to it without
But now
the
it works.
the previous adjustments.
I'm just telling you the stuff that I'm
And
reading
the
right
once I
now.
double click that one, menu elements is now populated.
Wait, what'd you do?
Huh?
What'd you do?
I just double clicked it.
Oh.
Yep. So this to me, it sounds like it's a bug more than anything else, because I haven't done anything really. Just I just
Other
changed
than
the
editing
XML
the
file.
XML.
Editing the XML file probably triggers some internal logic.
Can I see your
to
XML file? Sorry,
Sure.
I didn't interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
So if you remove test, you should still be able to add it with the GUI.
You will probably have to add a new item, like the way I did it.
So
And
you think
then-
it'll go back to not being able to add.
You know what?
the test.
This is the best thing about screen recording, because now I can trace back and find out what I did to get this to work.
The only thing I can think of is that it doesn't pick up program generated items. It actually probably looks for a user added item before it will generate them.
Well, when I changed main.xml, it triggered the internal logic to reparse that file. It is probably that action, that actually triggered itself to clean up, something that is clogging up, quote unquote, clogging up, the tool, because it's, because I'm manually changing main.xml, and when I go back to the tool to the layout tool, it's triggering something. Okay, there are several things that I did. 1, I added these items. 2, I ran the program. Now, when I ran the program, the tool has to go through all the process of saying, okay, so we'll take a look at the timestamp of main.xml and see whether it matches another type of internal representation only specific to the GUI tool. Okay, and it finds out that, hey, it's not matching. So I need to bring the GUI tool internal representation also up to date. It may be that action that is triggering the cleaning up of the internal representation. Yep.
Yeah, like you're saying, just for the next test,
Mm-hmm.
create a new one, a new
project. Mm-hmm.
run it, then see if you can
Yep.
list it.
Yeah, this is really a really good thing about screen recording, because the whole thing is being recorded. I can replay this whole thing, frame by frame. Now I'm only recording it at 15 frames per second, but I can only click so fast. But it's working. And that is the amazing part. Is now it's working. With all the attributes and whatnot. Great. Let's close it.
And that's the last of it working.
Because Eclipse is supposed to remember exactly where I left off last time and bring me back to exactly the same screen. So we'll take a look at that and see if. Oh.
Okay, now try running it
Mm-hmm.
and see if it'll reload.
Okay, so we'll. Okay, the XML file is correct. Okay, so we still have the correct XML file. So we'll run it first. Okay, where's my machine? It's right here. So let's back out of this one to force it to reload. Oh, okay, I have to go to my source file first. Is it running it?
In the background.
Yep, it is. Okay, it's got test, it's got settings. Okay, very good. Now we go back to
You got
resources. Go back to menu. Go to main XML. Go to layout. Nope, nothing has changed yet.
Click on AZ.
Hmm?
Click on AZ.
That's just sorting it.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if it'll.
Yeah, it's
Could
just
potentially
a
do
different way.
anything.
It's a toggle. Okay, that
So
is not fixing it.
You gotta add a new one now.
Well, we can add a new one. I mean,
Or how about just delete settings and then re-add it?
just to trigger it, right?
Yeah.
Or we can
Because
just,
settings is natively there.
or we can just move things around a little bit. Save it. And trigger it to.
I just click on layout right now.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay, let's back out of this one. Okay, it's not running it.
Because you need to go back to the run.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, I'm in the
Part
wrong
of-
file.
Yeah, just bring down the drop down for that run. Now click on test menu. That should do it.
Yep. Okay. Yep, it is reflected, the order is now test and then settings. So that should have triggered some internal tools to relook at the file.
Hopefully.
Nope, did not.
Close main .xml. And now reload it. Huh.
Okay, so we cannot reproduce the sequence of events or actions that quote unquote fix the problem. So to me, it's definitely a problem with the tool itself. It's not my fault. Which is kind of problematic because now we cannot really rely on the tool. It's still okay, we can do it by hand. Because if we go back to the documentation, it actually shows us how to do it, how to create an action group as opposed to an action item. The show as an action thing is actually quite useful because it allows you to pop an item out of the drop-down box onto the action bar itself. So you can now actually show things on the action bar as an action with an icon, instead of just always relying on a. So instead of needing 2 clicks to get to something, you can now get to it with only 1 click. Is that making any sense? Okay, let me go back to the application. I can show you what I mean by that. So in order to get to test, I have to click the drop-down box first, and then click on test. On the other hand, if I make it an action, if I make it show as action, then I can pop this test item here and make it a part of the action bar. Which is handy if it is something that people do a lot. So instead of having 2 clicks, they can do it with 1 single click. But you have to remember, with a smaller device, your action bar is only so wide. So if you try to put too much stuff on the action bar, it doesn't work. In fact, Android will prioritize and only show as many as it can show, and then the rest will still be triggered by the ... the overflow area. Yep.
Can you press, hold, and drag to see more items, or is that not?
Press.
If you have multiple items and it can't show all of it, can you just press and drag it off to the side, sliding off to the side? Or is that not a feature?
You mean you mean sliding here on the
if you
bar
had
itself?
4 items there and only 2 showed, could you just
I don't think so.
press,
because-
hold, and slide it?
Okay, let's take a look here. Because it has a attribute called if room. In other words, if there's not enough room, it won't show it.
Oh.
So if you don't specify if room, will it put it there anyway? Okay, right here. If there's not enough room in the action bar for the action item, the menu item appears in the overflow where only the title appears. So I don't think it will give you a scroll thingy, to scroll through the action items. Yeah, so it doesn't seem that it will work that way. Okay, so let's go back and change show as action. Let's see if that works. So show as action, we'll just put if room instead of never. So, and then switch back to here, rerun, and it's the same thing. Emulator. Now test appears here. And we can just click it. And once it's there, it does not appear under the overflow area anymore. All right. So we got a few things done today, even though we kind of struggle with the tool and have yet to get it fixed.
It's weird that we run into so many bugs all of a sudden. It's weird that we run into so many bugs all of a sudden.
Well, that's why I said there must be an infiltration by a competitor.
When did that new patch come out?
Like yesterday?
Okay. Because I usually just auto update like as soon as I see something new. So
No, freeze it. Freeze it. Don't auto update.
Yeah, so it looks like there's multiple values. If room, always, with text, and collapse action view.
Mm-hmm.
If room seems like the best one to me, because if you're trying to develop something for multiple devices,
Yep. Yep, because you can have a device that has a much longer bar, then you can have more items showing up. Yep. The newer interface of Android definitely try to make it so that you can make your app look right depending on regardless of the actual screen size, which is kind of cool. Okay.
so when we make like a new item, we have to create a new string.
You don't have to, but it's a better way to do it.
So
To
then now
create
you
a string for that.
have code labels that you can change, where all the text
Right.
is.
Yeah, all the strings are located in one single resource, so you don't have to send the source code of your application to someone to translate it, which is probably good because especially when your app is like really groundbreaking and you think you can make a lot of money. Now you don't have to disclose your actual app to somebody else, at least the source code. You just send them the string file, the string definition file, which is one XML file, right? You can send it off and say, okay, I need all of these words translated, and then whoever is doing the translation send you back the file. You're done. You can also do so in that case. You can also change the language setting on the fly, in the application. So you can have one setting that controls the language of your application, and just by switching to which file it is used to load the strings from, now you can switch the entire language in the entire interface language of your application, which is also very handy.
What about localizations, like dates and stuff like that? Like, how do you modify that? Like, a lot of times in different countries, they represent dates slightly different.
Right. I think that's probably under region control. So whether there's a direct linkage between region and your language setting, I'm not 100% sure.
Earlier this month, Google pushed out a new update to their text-to-speech that includes high-quality voices. So you don't get the robotic voice. It seems more natural.
I kind of miss that.
Yeah, it's like the like 200, be like a 100, 200 megabyte update for voice file.
The question is, do they have that available in Cantonese? Yep.
Is the strings file something that's in a lot of programming languages, or is that just kind of an Android?
That's basically the de facto standard now. If you want to design any type of user interactive application, they want you to put all the strings into one file. Now, whether it's really structured like this, that the application, the APK file is supporting this. Because when you install your Android application, the file, the language files are actually expanded as individual files. So that's how the framework works. But in most of the other types of applications, like VB and anything that has to do with a user interface, if the language itself does not enforce that, most developers are now self-enforcing that, including Moodle. If you look at Moodle, Moodle actually has individual files to define the strings, so that when we look at the help screens and all of the other stuff, all of those things are pulled out of a big, huge table of strings instead of having those literal text sprinkled all over the place.
So the user interface would be easily changed to a different language, but the
Correct.
But the content would still have to be translated.
That is correct. Yep. Now with Moodle, it's a different thing because I can change my main interface to Russian, but if I don't really rewrite all the topics, in Russian, then you will have the interface in Russian, but the content will still be in English. But when you're talking about an Android application, then you don't really have a whole lot of text type of content, unless your application is text heavy. Then you have a lot of text content. So when you switch the language to whatever target language you're going to use, it's going to be fine. Yeah, the only problem is when you have phrases, because when you have phrases, you might have two variables within the same phrase. In certain language, you have to have part A first and then part B second. But in some other languages, just because of the grammar of the language, you need to flip the order of part A and part B. So that part cannot be done by a string definition easily. You can do it in the good old tradition of a printf. So you can, inside the string itself, you can have $1 and $2 to represent, the first argument goes here, the second argument goes here. But that will require your own processing to replace, the placeholders with the actual values from the variables.
Like format specifiers.
Exactly.
Well,
Yep.
we don't have to really worry about this because everybody speaks English anyways.
Everybody should, right? Yep.
So, how do you get the 3 dots on there?
The 3 dots are by default there already to begin with. It's not yours,
No.
on yours?
It actually shows settings.
Without the 3 dots?
Yeah.
Oh, did you make your setting? Did you change the show
I
as
made it
action to?
compatible back to 3.0.
Ah, okay, there we go.
4.0, 3.0 is the same thing.
Still do the same thing?
Yeah.
Well, the last thing that I remember, because I had something that went from, I had an ice cream sandwich tablet, and then I got a different one that had jelly bean.
Mhm.
Jelly beans when they started with the 3 dots thing that I can remember.
Okay.
So it may be 4.3 and up that you get that. Otherwise, you get, if you're building for
Mine is set to a minimum version of 4.0,
Hmm.
not 4.3. Yep.
Oh, the other thing is, with the infra, we can actually put any number of, I mean, there's never, infra, always, and then you can choose all of them if you want, or some of them. You could actually join it together, so that item will show in the menu, like that, like Testa is right now, and then if you click on the menu button, it will show also instead.
So all of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so the one that is already here will
Show that
appear again here.
Yeah, or
Okay.
on the bottom.
So it's probably one of the settings here inside show as action, right?
Yeah, if the Eclipse was looking fine, it will give you a menu where you check where you check the options.
If
Okay. Well, the other thing we can do is just to search for show as action options. So we can say Android show as action options. Menu resource, and that should describe. This is basically the syntax description of what you can put into an item. And if you look at show as action, then we have all of these items here. Okay, let me zoom out just enough to show it. Nope, cannot zoom out enough to show the entire thing. And it doesn't let me scroll. I have a vertical scroll bar, but not a horizontal scroll bar. I cannot get it to show that part.
limitation of the workstation cracking open.
Well, you know what? I can always overcome the
It's
limitation.
an iframe.
Hmm? Oh. Okay. Nope, it's not an iframe either.
Well,
It's got a scroll bar.
yeah, it has its own scroll
Oh,
bar.
it has an. Okay, I see what you mean.
Collapse action.
So show as action has if room, never, with text, always, collapse action view.
I wonder if that is what sets it. Well, I will test that theory.
Well, with always means, okay, the question is, what if you put everything as always? Would you be able to then scroll through all those actions? Because if it won't fit, and you say, always, that means it's always going to show up.
I wonder if it takes the highest one in the list.
But if you say always, it's always. If you prioritize, then it's still if room. Yeah.
Maybe it's always it is showing it, but it's just being cut off until like you rotate your screen
Mhm.
to make it larger to show the additional items.
It's easy enough to test it. Right.
Making a few more of those.
Yep. Just.
How are these separated when you can you put multiple things in the show as action, or is it just one?
Say again.
Can you have multiple, like if room, collapse action here, is it?
Yeah, you can use a vertical bar for or.
Okay.
But whatever you specify as or probably should not conflict, because if it's conflicting, then we have a problem there. I'm very tempted to use VI right
You just change
Oh.
100 to always.
now.
What API level are you using?
4.
Because I think action
Okay.
bar is only up to API level
You have
11.
two test tubes also.
Oh.
Introduce the action bar.
Say again?
You have two test tubes also.
Like
Oh.
what API level am I using for this project?
Yeah.
19.
Right, so let's see if that works.
Maybe the ABD.
Maybe. Oh, I didn't even think about
Right,
that.
well. Well, I'm not sure whether I can scroll it using my pointer.
Well, if you
It's
clicked
using
in
18.
and if you clicked and drag
Yeah, that's what I
and
did.
nothing happens, then no.
Yeah, I just click and drag it.
Rotate your view.
Good times.
I guess that's the most
Auto
literal.
rotates it on.
Well, it's not sensitive, right? I mean, I did not turn on that part, I think.
But what? I thought that was automatic.
Not?
No, the application has to support
Mm.
it.
Is it the application or the AVD?
Who's the application?
Yeah, I think a rotation must be enabled in the Android INET or
The AVD?
manifest.
Okay.
Because remember, we used the AVDs with the rotation sensor in the last class, and that's
Right.
the way that they rotate.
I don't think, clicking and dragging it is the same thing as scrolling. But
No, because when you hit the when you're in the lock screen, you
Mhm.
click, hold, and drag.
Oh, that's right. Yep. So that means, if you use always and you run out of room, then something ugly is going to happen.
It will just try to put it there and just trim it off if you can't see it.
Yep. All right. So that
Versus
that
not
answers,
showing it.
So that answers that question. Let's go back to main.xml and try layout again. No, nothing happened. Did we accidentally hit the magic sequence to fix it? No, we did not.
It worked on a fluke.
It was just mysterious. Why would it work in that case? You know what? That's one thing that I did. I looked in this file and I actually pointed here and say something about it, but I did not actually modify anything.
Yeah, you didn't change it.
I did not change it. Okay, well let's just do it as
Try changing the category number, see if that does anything.
the category number.
Yeah, the order in which they're placed. Never know.
Here. Okay, I don't think that's going to trigger it either.
Yeah, probably not.
We'll give it a try.
There we go.
Okay. Up to here. Go back to menu. Nope, that did not change it. All right, so we somehow got it working once. We just have to replay that sequence over and over.
Click add.
Hmm?
Click add again.
Yeah, just green out.
Now click on the grayed out area once. Now in the white space.
Nothing.
Click cancel.
Nope.
Now
Nothing.
put your hand on your head.
Stand upside down. I'm sorry, this is just not working today.
Trying to get a damn TV signal on an old box TV.
Well, I was trying very hard to get this working last night, and then something happened to my Linux installation. It just won't start. It doesn't get past init RAM FS. It has to do with LVM. I use LVM. My root partition is in LVM.
Well, are you using...
Which normally works, but for whatever reason, there's an update with Grub, and I think Grub is not including LVM.
Well, I had a problem with the newest Grub because I use Jessie, so I get like one package behind what SID is basically, and the Grub that I was using couldn't get past loading initial RAM disk.
Oh, okay, so it's probably the same problem that
Right.
I'm having.
So you can download Refit or something like that, or some other type of boot manager that just looks for kernels
Mhm.
and will boot the kernel.
Yeah, with mine, it's not putting. I don't think it's putting LVM the module into the bootloader. So the bootloader could not find it's
Just
trying to
add
locate it.
insmod, whatever the LVM.
Yeah, I tried to do it inside BusyBox. It wouldn't do it. It said LVM is not available. Yep. Well, completely separate from this class
This
is.
is your Linux talk.
Yeah. I mean, Android is Linux based. I mean, so it's still remotely connected.
Let's see.
All right, I'm gonna stop the recording.